Late December 2021. A hydroelectric project in Yunnan Province, China, running since 2006, records the first carbon credit retirement in its history. The buyer is not a company offsetting a flight, it is a smart contract. Over the next few months, 2 million more credits come out of that project. 98.9% of every retirement it has ever recorded went the same way. It was one of about 22 million Verra credits that went onto a blockchain between October 2021 and May 2022. Almost nobody ever used them. The reason is not the one you would guess. Throw out the picture in your head. January 2023. The Guardian, with Deetsite and source material, publishes the headline everybody remembers. More than 90% of rainforest carbon offsets by the biggest certifier are worthless. That is the picture. Rainforest, Verra, worthless. Now look at what went on chain. Land use was 10% of it, against 49% for every other Verra retirement those 2 years. Renewable energy was 68%, against 40%. And 4 countries, China, India, Turkey, and Brazil, are 92% of it. Everyone assumes tokenized carbon was about the rainforest. It was about old hydroelectric dams. One favor to the journalists. That 90% is the reporter's own arithmetic laid on 3 studies, not a finding in any of them, and Verra's objection, that it was never published for review, has never been answered. But the famous scandal and the tokenized market barely touch. What happened on-chain is a different story, and nobody has told it. So how does a Chinese hydro credit become a token? Toucan's bridge had 5 steps, and step 2 is the whole story. The holder logged into their own Verra account and retired the credit. Verra issued a serial number. A Toucan verifier approved it, and the retirement was split into tokens. 1 token, 1 ton. In registry terms, retirement means consumed, permanently removed, never sellable to an emitter again. Nothing was locked in escrow. There was no path back. Not a bridge, a one-way door. Then, any token meeting a pool's admission criteria minted 1 fungible pool token called BCT. BCT's floor was a 2008 vintage and any Verra-approved methodology. If you work in structured credit, you know how this ends. A good credit and a worthless one minted the same BCT and traded at the same price. So the admission criteria were not a feature of the product, they were the product. Give a market a bid that ignores quality, and what answers it is the supply nobody else would buy at that price. For 1 quarter, more than 1/3 of every credit retired on Verra was retired to mint a token. 89% of all bridging landed in 4 months, exactly the window the token price was going vertical. When the price stopped, the bridging stopped, not when the criticism started. In October 2025, 4 years later, 1 transaction pulled 4.8 million tons back out of the pool, in the pool's own order. 56% was vintage 2014 or older, 97% 2018 or older. The biggest line items were a hydro project in Sikkim and 2 dams in Turkey and Brazil. 11 of the top 15 were grid-connected hydro or wind. One line is not about age. Every HFC 23 credit retired on the whole Verra registry in that window went to the bridge. Nearly 878,000 tons out of 1 Chinese project. Ordinary retirements of it over the same weeks, 0. KlimaDAO burned about 672,000 tons of it a year later, calling the credit at best low quality and at worst valueless. So why would anyone destroy a registry credit to hold a token? Because someone was paying more. Renewable energy credits transacted off-chain at $2.16 a ton in 2021. BCT launched between $5 and $8. For the cheapest, oldest, least wanted category in the market, that was a liquid exit at triple the price. And that is not the number. On top of the pool sat KlimaDAO, a protocol that bought carbon with its own token. On the 23rd of October 2021, CoinGecko's close for 1 Klima token was $3,777. Query the chain at that block, and each token was backed by 13.3 tons of carbon, worth about $74. The token traded at more than 50 times the carbon behind it, and then it inverted. By September 2022, on an analysis KlimaDAO commissioned from Allied Offsets and never published, The pool traded at $1.55 on-chain against $5 and up off-chain. A 70% discount on their own analysis. 11 months. From a premium worth killing a credit for to a discount nobody would take. Carbon Plan found that 99.9% of bridged credits were CORSIA ineligible. We replicated it exactly. It is close to useless as evidence because 82.3% of ordinary Verra retirements in the same window fail the identical screen. The real disproportion is vintage. 50.3% of everything bridged was a pre-2013 credit, against 15.4% for every other Verra retirement those 2 years. A 3.3 times concentration that nobody had published before. 2 years later, somebody audited the methodologies. On the 6th of August 2024, the Integrity Council for the Voluntary Carbon Market, the industry's own integrity body, denied its core carbon principles label to 8 renewable energy methodologies on additionality grounds. One of them was ACM 0002, grid-connected renewables, 64.5% of everything the bridge ever bought. A revised version passed conditionally in May 2026. The legacy versions on-chain did not. In the same program, Verra's replacement RED Plus methodology was approved, and not quietly. A panel member resigned and a founding member had already walked out. The rainforest half of the market passed the audit. The half the blockchain bought did not. Now the honest part. The market was already like this. Ordinary Verra retirements over those 2 years, with the bridge taken out, were 40% renewable energy and 46% pre-2016 vintage. The bridge concentrated an existing problem. It did not invent one. And it was not a graveyard. 63% of bridge tonnage came from projects that had sold to a conventional buyer within 6 months. The 175 projects Carbon Plan flagged sold 29 million tons conventionally in the same window, more than the bridge took, to Delta, Shell, and Volkswagen. Delta's own offset book is 69% those same projects, 13.8 million tons. So the honest multiple is 2 to 3 times worse than the market, not 100. The blockchain bought more of what the Fortune 500 was already buying, and skewed worse doing it. Carbon Plan published its analysis on the 7th of April 2022. 7 weeks later, Verra prohibited the practice of creating instruments or tokens based on retired credits. Toucan paused the bridge that day and never reopened. Verra did not ban tokenization. It deleted the one mechanism the bridge depended on and promised a replacement. Immobilized the credit instead of retiring it. That framework has never shipped. The July 2026 terms of use contain no clause about tokens or blockchain. Verra rebuilt the entire registry that month, and the announcement does not contain the word blockchain. So where did the 22 million tons go? 22 million tons of Verra credits were ever bridged. Just over 1.1 million were ever retired on-chain, the step where somebody actually claims an offset. 5%. The registry retirement was only transport. To claim an offset, the holder still had to retire the token, and almost nobody did. So 21 million tons of climate benefit were struck permanently off Verra's books, and no emitter ever offset anything with them. None of it is reversible. Those tons are stranded, not sold. The bridge converted 21 million tons of tradable inventory into an accounting void. Here is today's reading. 17.4 million tons of carbon are still sitting on-chain. The pool BCT actually trades against holds 722,000 tons and $591. People will mark that stock to market and get a number in the hundreds of thousands. Ignore it. You cannot sell 15 million tons into $591 of liquidity. The White House wrote the thesis line 3 years early. Office of Science and Technology Policy, September 2022. This issue of trust in VCMs is not the trust issue that blockchain or distributed ledgers solve, which is the lesson for anyone building a pool. Tokenize a heterogeneous asset class into one fungible unit, and the admission criteria are the entire product. Good and bad mint the same token, so only the cheap gets bridged. One thing this did deliver. Every number in this film exists because the transactions are still public 4 years later. Nobody can do that to an off-chain inventory. The fix both sides of the science now recommend. Paying on verified outcomes rather than a certificate in advance is a cash flow problem. Programmable Rails could do that. Nobody built it.